Greetings, this is your professor, Fred Witzig, and this is a Wit and Wisdom video. I'm actually a college dropout, and I'm very thankful for that. And I want to tell you why. As I'm telling you, you will also learn how I came to be a professional historian. I want to talk to you about my formal education. I say formal to distinguish it, to distinguish my classroom education from all the other ways that I have been educated. I think it is past high time that we get rid of this awful habit of thinking of education as merely something that goes on in a college classroom. I think, frankly, that much of the best education that we all receive takes place outside of the classroom. So this video concerns my formal education, that segment or that fraction of my education that took place in a classroom. I have loved history for many, many years, really pretty much as long as I can tell, as I can remember. But when I graduated from high school, I didn't want to teach, and I mistakenly thought, as many people do, that the only way to have a career in history was to teach. So I chose something that I thought was more practical, biochemistry. My dad wanted me to be a doctor, but I don't really like to touch people, and that seemed like a problem to me. And I also didn't want to be responsible for people's lives. But I really enjoyed chemistry, I enjoyed biology, and I really enjoyed learning about how the human body works. So I majored in biochemistry, and that did not go very well. To make a long story short, I came to realize that as much as I loved biochemistry, the chances are no employer was going to pay me to do a task, complete a task in a week that it took someone else a day to complete. And in the meantime, I was going through a very difficult time in my personal life. No need to get into details, but let's just say that it was a time of incredible growth for me, personal growth. I was learning much more about Jesus and my relationship to Him and my relationship to other people. And I wanted to maximize that time of personal growth. So I dropped out of college in my sophomore year. I worried about what my dad would think of me. Turns out we happened to come home that day at the same time, and I met my dad at the door. And I said, "Dad, I gotta tell you something. I just dropped out of college today." My dad, who cared so much about my education, looked me in the eye. He paused and he said, "Fred, if that's what you think you need to do, I'll support you." I've remembered that and appreciated it all these years later. Well, I had been working part-time for my cousin for quite a few years. My cousin owns a business selling and installing window coverings. Think like blinds and draperies. And I was his first employee actually in high school. Well, when I dropped out of college, I went to work for him full-time. It was a great job. In fact, I learned more important things about life working for him than I ever did in school. After my family and my church, that job did more to educate me about living successfully than any other entity ever. I learned about hard work. I learned to work hard when working and then to be able to rest when I'm resting. I learned about doing a job right, about being honest and taking care of my neighbors. I learned the satisfaction of working really hard during the day, doing something useful for someone else, and then going home tired at the end of the day, satisfied that I had made the world a little bit better place for someone else. I met a lot of wonderful people, and I did pretty well financially. Personally, I think every young person should have that kind of an experience. But eventually, I felt the call of Jesus to teach, so I went back to school. Since I was going to be teaching, I figured I might as well teach history. So I did what I still recommend any young person to do. I looked on a map, and I found the closest and cheapest college that offered the degree that I wanted. I believe firmly, still do, that it matters much more what you do in college than what college you attend. That school for me was California State University in Los Angeles, Cal State LA. It's the UCLA for the working class, and I got a very good education there. I majored in social sciences. The conventional wisdom at the time was that if you major in history, then pretty much all you can do is teach history, and teaching jobs in history weren't very plentiful. If you majored in social sciences, then you could also teach geography, or you could teach government, as well as history. So I majored in social sciences. And it went well. The Lord blessed me with successes that I hadn't anticipated, and really much more success than I deserved. So when my friend who was pursuing a PhD in chemistry at Caltech, just up the road, when my friend encouraged me to go on to graduate school and teach history on a college level, I gave it some thought. Actually, I laughed at first. I was married by then, and we had 3 kids. I was also in a position of leadership in my church, and that took a lot of time. School is expensive and time-consuming, and I was frankly just happy to complete my bachelor's. On the other hand, I was getting very discouraged by the politicized nature of high school teaching, and I really did enjoy the college level. So I began to think about it. I mentioned it very kind of hesitantly to my wife, Nancy, and then I didn't say anything. I realized that if this was going to work, if I was going to go to college and graduate school successfully, that she would have to be on board with it, that she would have to be at peace with it. So I didn't want to cajole her or force her to accept this. And you know, the Lord worked in both of our hearts. And after a while, we both kind of spontaneously just kind of started talking about the idea. We decided that it would be more feasible financially and logistically if we moved to the Midwest. There were several very good history programs in the Los Angeles area, but they were all about, with traffic, they were all about an hour and a half away from our house. And it was pretty expensive living in Los Angeles. And frankly, we were all kind of tired of living in the big city anyway. Plus, we had family in the Midwest, close family in the Midwest. So it seemed natural that we would go back there. And one of my trusted professors recommended Notre Dame and Indiana University in Bloomington, or IU, Indiana University. I did not get accepted at Notre Dame, but I did at IU, and I was disappointed at first. George Marsden, who I mentioned in other videos, taught at Notre Dame at the time, and I really badly wanted to study with him. But frankly, IU had a higher ranked program, and my professor told me that there was another great professor, Stephen Stein, at IU, and he was right. So in the spring of 1999, I graduated summa cum laude from Cal State LA. I worked all summer long and then moved back to Indiana, in Bloomington, Indiana, to start school, graduate school at IU in the fall. We had enough money for 1 year of school, and after that, the Lord would just have to figure out how we could continue. And he did. The day after we arrived in Bloomington, Indiana, the secretary of the history department at IU called me and offered me a teaching assistant position. Turns out the advanced student who was going to be that teaching assistant had just got a part-time job teaching somewhere else. And so they had this opening, and they thought maybe I would like it. Well, I had made arrangements to install drapes and blinds for the facilities department at IU. And that would have been fine, but this was a great opportunity. A teaching assistant position offered me higher pay, health insurance for my family, and paid almost all of my tuition. And I had out-of-state tuition since I was an out-of-state student. Plus, it was a great experience for me. Well, let me tell you, my mom and dad had helped us move out there, and my mom was there when I received this call from the secretary. She told me later that she had had some reservations about my family moving back to Indiana from LA, but that call helped to convince her that we really truly were following Jesus' leading by moving to Indiana. And frankly, it helped me out too. And so for the next 9 years, the Lord provided in ways very similar to that. There were times when we didn't know how we were going to pay for things, but Jesus always provided a way. He really, truly is good and provides his people with what they need to do his will. I decided to major in American history, focusing especially on American religion. That was my major field, American history with a focus on religion, and minor in world history. And then I chose an outside minor, a minor outside of my department, my history department, of religious studies. So I had a major field of American history with a focus on religion, a minor field of world history, and an outside minor of religious studies. I received my master's degree in 2001, and I immediately got a teaching job teaching world history at Marian University. Then it was called Marian College in Indianapolis. I also decided to take a year away from college and pray about whether or not I really wanted to pursue a PhD. I enjoyed studying history in graduate school, but I still had a long row ahead of me. Well, I also started teaching at a local community college and at a private college in Indianapolis, or near Indianapolis, in Franklin, Indiana, named Franklin College. And I enjoyed teaching at all of these places. But I also came to realize that I really needed my PhD and if I was going to make a living at this. So I went back for my PhD. I spent another 2 years in coursework, then a year studying for exams and taking 2 classes in public history. After passing my exams, I spent 4 years writing my dissertation. My dissertation is a 400+ page research paper examining the opposition to the evangelical revivals of the 1730s and 1740s. Opposition to the Great Awakening, the evangelical revivals of the 1730s and 1740s in Charlestown, South Carolina and Philadelphia. And I'm sure I'll talk more about that later. So I graduated with my PhD in 2008 from Indiana University in Bloomington. Since I earned my master's in 2001, I have been teaching pretty much a full load of history classes at Franklin College and the Community College and Marian College and a regional state university in Indianapolis. I spent 1 year full-time at Franklin before getting a job at Monmouth College in Western Illinois, where I am today. And I've been studying and teaching history ever since. God has been very good to me. He's blessed my school studies, and He's blessed me and my family and my teaching with teaching jobs through school and after graduation. Thank you for watching this Wit and Wisdom video with your Professor Fred Witzig. I pray the Lord blesses your day with all you need to know Him more fully.